Back in the day, commencement notice was only a single piece of paper. It told you the builder, the owner, the plan reference number, the fee, simple enough. That was all, and to be honest, you were pretty lucky to get it sometimes. But now the significance of that has changed, because back then it didn't determine whether you got a certain compliance and therefore whether you could occupy or use a building. But now the significance of it has changed drastically, because we're out of valid commencement notice under the new system. You can't get a commencement, if you can't get the commencement notice, you can't get a certain compliance. Can't get a certain compliance, you're prohibited from opening, occupying or using that building. And in some instances, some of the financial institutions, they restrict people or restrict the funding because they require the certain compliance from the BCMS system. They require that commencement notices. So it has quite a big impact on the industry from that perspective. And the simplicity of that, this single piece of paper has gone, because it's gone from one single piece of paper to all these 7 individual pieces of paper, several different signatures, 7 ways that a mistake can happen, an error can occur. And that's the issue with the building control regulations. When an error occurs, there's no forgiveness. When a commencement notice is invalid, it stays invalid. It does not become uninvalid. There is no mechanism within the system. And on top of that, again, what you actually end up with is not just that high probability of failure because of all the documentations. There are actually 4 types of commencement notices. Okay, you have the notice without documentations, aka that's the short form. You have the notice with documentations, also known as the long form. You have the opt-out. We all have our own little words for that. And then you have the 7-day notice. And an error occurs in that can be quite critical. So you basically have the 4 commencement notices. You have to choose which one. And then on top of that, another layer of complication that can lead to mistakes, again, system's unforgiving, is that you may not need a commencement notice at all. So under the 7, this is what requires commencement notice: direction of a building, okay, material alterations or extension of a building, material change of use. But it's only applicable where the building regulations apply. So if the building regulations do not apply, you don't need a commencement notice. And in this instance, in the building regulations, you're exempted from a temporary building, which is a house. You're exempted a bicycle shed, a storage. They are exempted developments from the building regulations. And the only purpose of the building control regulations is to ensure compliance with the building regulations. So if the building regulations aren't applicable, then there's no need for building control regulations at all. Okay? And then on top of that, a commencement notice is not required for plan permission. It's exempted from plan permission unless a fire safety cert is required. Now, my other hat is plan enforcement, and I can only think of one instance where you would be exempt from plan permission but still require a fire cert. That's an aerodrome, so I don't think we're going to be too busy with them. Okay, and then after that, this is your obligation. I want you to pay attention to this one, is that a person who intends to carry out works shall give to the Building Control Authority. This is the legislation, okay? Building Control Authority, okay, 14 days after their intention. And the only time you're out from that is when you need a 7-day notice. It shall not be required, okay? So, as Mairead said in the previous one, where you're exempted from planning permission, you don't need it, or exempt from the regs. I've had commencement notices come into me for stripping a site. I've had it for boundary wall. I've had it for demolition of a house. I've had it for the construction of a car park. Okay, each one is invalidated because the building control or building regulations are not applicable. Okay, because there's no what's going to happen at the end. There's nothing for at the end process. They're invalidated. Okay. Commencement notice. This is the forms you have to use, and some errors happen here either with the local authorities or the people submitting it. Filed electronically on the BCMS system, or as put a second schedule of the building control regulations. That means it can be handed over into the counter. Once the fee's paid, handed over in the counter, according to the building control regulations, because the BCMS system is not the building regulations. It's only a mechanism that we use. It doesn't register every single thing, every aspect that's required to be registered under Part 4, Article 21 of the regulations. Okay? And with that, okay, it's a company with such plans and calculation specifications and certificate of notice of appropriate persons. These are where errors happen. This here is where you invalidate. You can't accept it. Okay, this here was correct. So this is the long form. Okay, so it's design and construction of a new building. Okay, an extension to a dwelling involving a floor area of 40 meters squared, and where a fire cert is required. Now, so that's the long form. Now, this is where a mistake can happen. I've had it where someone has put in a short form, an opt-out, and he's put in the plan permission description. And his plan description was for 41 meters squared extension. So he's automatic, he's over 41 meters squared. He had applied for plan permission. We invalidated it, sent back to him. The next 2 days later, we got the opt-out came back in, and he actually wrote what he was actually working on. He didn't just copy and paste the plan permission number, and it showed it 40 meters squared. And what he had actually done was put the installation inside the extension. So we all thought it was clever. The not so clever bit was actually going for the plan permission in the first place for it. But you get that. But there's the errors. But plan permission description, again, shouldn't be put in. It's the description that you're doing, and that's what you actually check for. Now, documents required to be lodged with a commencement notice. You have general arrangement drawings. Okay, again, these should be general arrangement drawings, not plan permission drawings. Okay, now, drawings can be added on afterwards. Not all documents that are uploaded have to be the complete package that's being built. Because at the end of the process, according to the code of practice, with the CCC, you can upload drawings. So it's not, again, not the BCMS system. This is the building regulations. This is the building control regulations. Okay? And then, this is where they get caught. You have to do an online assessment on the BCMS. Now, I've actually tried this. And you can go onto the system, you can log in, you can do an online assessment, you get a number, that's it. Because according to the building control regulations, that's what you can do. Why you would do that, go to all the effort of going on the BCMS system and doing all that hard work, and then come in over the counter. You think, but then again, you could have an issue with the computer system. You might be able to do that. All the documents are signed. They want to start in 2 weeks' time. They've got a guy ready to rock and roll onto the site. The form has already been signed, dated. If they go past that date, 14 days, you can't accept it. So there is an instance where that can happen. And under the regulations, you can accept it. You can't invalidate it. Okay? And then you have the preliminary inspection plan by the assigned certifier. Okay, certificates that are to be lodged. Okay, design cert. This is critical. It really is critical, and it has kind of come down over the years. First of all, the designer has to be registered. It has to be a signature, has to be a registration number on that. If it's not, there's reasons to be invalidated. Okay. The other thing is that what he's saying in his cert, which I'll show you later on, is that these drawings that I'm submitting have been designed in accordance to the building regulations. But the vast majority of the time they're not. They're just planning permission drawings, especially for one-off houses just lobbed in. And they could be out of date. They could have the specifications on it, but planning can take years. But the same drawings, or some guy that's copying and pasting his drawings and selling them all around the county. You've seen more than one house the same in the countryside. So this is an important thing that has to be looked at. I know we're not under section 6.4, we're not required, but it leads to complications after. That comes back to you as a building control officer. That comes back to you as a local authority. So the whole purpose is to try to eliminate errors so that you can validate it rather than invalidate. Okay, notice of person to certify. This is the signed certifier. Okay, you make sure here again, sign certifier's name, signature, and his registration number, not the practice. Certification, just as undertaking. Here you have the assignment of the builder, and then under here you have the certificate of compliance, the undertaking by the builder. If you read the cert, what's actually happened here is the builder is certifying that he'll build in accordance to that design cert. He's going to build in accordance to them drawings that were lodged at commencement stage. So it's important to look at that, make sure it's correct, that it's not just the builder's name, that it's actually a signature, and that the documents are correct. Because that's where mistakes happen. And again, the system is unforgiving. Down the line, you cannot correct that. And it's only then that occurs, the issues can occur onto it. Okay? Okay, and the forms are set out in the schedule to the building regulations. Okay? These forms, they can't be changed. They can't be altered. Okay? You're stuck with what's the wording of them in the second schedule for the long forms. Then here we have the opt-out. I think everybody loves this one. Okay? It requires a declaration of intention from the owner to opt out. Now, I've been asked loads of times, what do I think of this? Or what would I recommend? Or what would I advise somebody on it? And when it comes to an opt-out, the way I advise somebody is that what you're about to do is equivalent to buying a Maserati and go and getting third-party fire and theft. Because that's what it is. Because you have the assumption that you're an excellent driver and won't crash, and that everybody else on the road is just as good a driver as you and not going to crash into you. Because that's what that is. I've done a study of, I took 10 houses with opt-out, 10 houses with full long form. The difference between the hours were very, very similar. But the consequences of trying to get it rectified were major. So that's how I best advise it. Now, it requires assignment of the builder. Okay, there's no requirement to lodge a preliminary inspection plan, no requirement to lodge a certificate of design, no requirement to lodge notice of assignment, no certificate undertaking assignment of, no undertaking by the builder. There is a requirement to do an online assessment. Okay, so if they aren't on it, you can't make them give it to you because they're not required to do that. You can advise them not to use it, but it's one of those options. Okay, commencement notice without documentation. Okay, this here is with this, that should actually say fire cert not required. So this is where the long form is not required. Okay, and examples of that, there's no requirement on this to an online assessment and the BCMS. So this can go over the counter to you. Doesn't have to be on the BCMS system. Again, BCMS system is not the building regulations. I'll give you an example of this. You have a single-story agricultural building over 300 metres squared. Because if that agricultural building was under 300 metres squared, it's exempted from the building regulations. It's exempted and clarifies it doesn't require any building control regulations. You have a single-story domestic garage. You have an extension to dwelling under 42 metres squared, 40 metres squared. That's where the extension is to the side of the house. That requires plan permission. You can use the short form on that. Okay, I've had an instance where I've had a short form come in, or route documentation come into me, and it was very vague. It was renovation of cottage. So you can ask for documentations, further information, clarification. I asked for it, they wouldn't give it, so I invalidated it. Call went upstairs, call came downstairs. I sent the call back upstairs, and I said, just send in the drawings. So submitted the drawings. And on the plans, they actually had decided to put a mezzanine floor in, where the stairs coming from the kitchen, right from the kitchen, all the way up to the mezzanine floor, which was the bedroom. Under 2 metres high, no windows. So the only access and exit was through the actual kitchen. I said, not acceptable. They come in, put the new drawings in, happy enough that validated. Because you're trying to prevent issues that are coming down the line. You're a building control authority, albeit you can sit back and wait for it to happen, but that's a problem that you're going to have to deal with afterwards. And saying that where the customer is not always right, but they're still your customer. Always remember that. Okay, now this is the forms. So Maria's going over this, I'll go over more detail. You do not need a plan permission for this to be validated. Okay, you do not need a DAC for this to be validated. Okay, you do need a correct description of the works. The amount of times I've got retention and completion of development, you can't have that. You can't have retention in it, that has to go. There's no signatures. There's no registration number for it. The company name is down onto it. Okay, the wrong fire safety cert numbers on it. The commencement notice date is wrong. This is where I said before, we've come across this a few times, where all the documentation has been signed and dated, and this could be a Friday evening, and given to the person within the office to upload it. Comes a bank holiday weekend, oh, I'm legging it home, I'll do it on Monday. I can't do it on Monday, I'll do it on Tuesday. Well, I'm out sick on Tuesday because of Monday, and I could do it on Wednesday. That 14-day period is gone. Okay, and then you have the miscommunication down to the builder on site, because he's rocking up in 14 days, he set his guy onto it, he's on site. All of a sudden he commences work, not in breach of the commencement notice. Commencement notice is gone. It's gone. Can't reverse it. Once it's invalidated, it's invalidated. Okay? So it's very important that that is done, filled out correctly, and that you take notice of the errors that can happen, because you're trying to, as a building controller, or trying to be assigned certifier, whoever is lodging it up, to eliminate the problems, because they may seem insignificant here, but as I said, they have a major significance afterwards. And one of the worst ones I've seen was all documentation was up. It was a 7-day notice. All documentation was up. All documentation was perfect. And I forgot to press submit. And remember, Article 8, submit to the Building Control Authority. They didn't submit it. It was up in the BCMS system, but it wasn't valid because the BCMS system, not building regulations, and it wasn't submitted to the local authority. Okay, and that caused serious problems down the line for those people. Okay, now, this is it here, and I'll just design cert there. He's designing and has been designed plans to the building regulations. Again, it's important that the drawings, you check that the drawings are not plan permission drawings, but construction drawings, albeit general arrangement drawings. Any specifications around it should stipulate the current building regulations, not old building regulations. Why? Because he's certifying that. And then when it comes to sign certifier and do inspections, okay, when it comes to this one, read that. The builder is building in accordance to the documentation that has been uploaded to the design stage. I've had a court case where everybody we were straight at the builder, going for the builder, and the builder says, I'm not to blame fully here. Everybody else is to blame. Legal advice was, yes, he's actually not fully responsible here. Other people are responsible. But the regulations only allow me to go after him. So again, to try and prevent from the industry, to try and prevent mistakes, make sure the drawings are correct, make sure the drawings comply with the building regulations. For ourselves as building control officers, to prevent issues down the line that you may not be able to control, but you may be dragged into, check them. That's my advice to you. Okay, this is the declaration of opt-out. There's your third-party fire and theft insurance gone down. And then procedure under Article 10. Okay, record the date. So when it comes into you, or comes on over the counter, or comes into the BCMS system, it's recorded. You have to record it. It's your obligation as a local authority under Article 21 of the Building Control Act to register it. Because if you're using the BCMS system as your register, you have to register it. Okay? If it comes over the counter, you have to register it. I know there's a thing in the code of practice where it says you can charge a fee and stuff like that. But if someone says, I'm not charging a fee, well, put it on your register. You can have more than one register, but you're required to have a register. You're required to maintain that register, wherever way that comes in. Okay? And I would, as I said, I would recommend that you actually look at the drawings because they do lead for problems down the line. Okay? Now, consider whether the requirements of Article 9, okay, if it complies. That's what the local authorities would do. And I'll emphasize this. This is the wording. Where a building control authority considers. Nobody else can consider it, only you, as a building control authority. It is not if it's in accordance with Article 9. you shall validate or compliant. It says in the consideration of the local authority. So it's in your remit to consider it. They may all not be there, but according to that wording, it's up to you whether you want to accept it or reject it. Okay? And then what you have, considers whether it is, if you don't, you have 7 days to give notice or 12 days in writing. If you don't do it by that, as per the Code of Practice, by default, because the Code of Practice, Article 20G of the Building Control Regulations, okay, it's prima facie compliance. The Code of Practice is the equivalent of the technical guidance document. If they comply with it, it automatically is compliant. So therefore, if you don't invalidate or just leave it hanging for 7 days or 12 days, whatever it is, depending on the time that's submitted to you, it's by the Code of Practice, it is automatically validated. And there's nothing you can do because you can't invalidate something. Okay? Okay, notify the person. A commencement notice is invalid or valid and cannot be accepted by the local authority, and then or here. Now this is where you have the chance to ask for further information, if you want to call it that. It's not a section 11.3 because there's no construction. Construction hasn't started. You can ask that for that information. And that's where that information has to come to you within that time frame of 7 days. If it doesn't, then you end up invalidating it. Okay? If it does and you're happy enough, away you go. You can't get another bite at it because that clock of 7 days is ticking. Okay? So it's important to understand that it comes to the local authority. It's important to understand that it's the building control consideration in regards to the documents that has been submitted. Okay, now when you go on to the 7-day notice, it's a slightly different animal altogether, in that it is only for where you want to start working, you don't have a commencement, you don't have a fire cert. I've had, when it first came out, I had a 7-day notice for a house. I invalidated it because you have the declaration and all that, and your man was going nuts. Why? I said, this is for a fire cert, but I want to start work now. I said, but no, it's a standard commencement notice for it. I goes, no, I want to start, I have a fella starting in 2 weeks. I need to get the site stripped. I said, well, you can strip the site. The commencement notice is only applicable when the bucket goes in the ground and the concrete goes in. Oh. So that assistance you should give, that assistance should help, because again, a misinterpretation of what they are. But with a 7-day notice, okay, it's where it's proposed before the grant of the fire cert and shall be submitted not less than 7 days in advance of commencement. And there's no expiry date for commencement notice. So if commencement notice is submitted to you and you validate it, even though work may never have started, it never withers, it never expires. It's there forever. Because it only is 7 days prior to the commencement that it is. And it is only the intention to build. A commencement notice, once a commencement notice is activated, the foundation is put into the ground, it never withers, it never expires. Why? Because the 7-day notice and a commencement notice are notices to the local authority. They're not applications seeking permission to build. They're only a notification to you. There's no appeal process for a commencement, for an invalid commencement notice or invalid 7-day notice, because they're not applications. You look at the regs, you have an application for DAC, a revised DAC, a fire cert, revised fire cert, reg cert, okay, dispensation relaxation. They're all applications that are processed, that have appeal processes. These don't, because the system is absolutely unforgiving. If it makes a mistake, it's gone. You can't get one. Now, with a commencement notice, if it's already commenced, they can come back, where a fire cert is not required, they can come back and get a commencement notice for completion of the works. If a fire cert is required, nothing. You cannot get a commencement notice, you cannot get a 7-day notice, okay? Because it goes straight in to go to a reg cert. That's what's the wording of it. So it's very important, and that leads to serious issues down the line, because where a fire cert is involved, you're usually dealing with a commercial building or a large apartment block, which is, we're talking serious money here, and you will get dragged in because of the wording of of Article 10 and of the wording of the rest of the legislation to the other people that are dealing with it. Okay. Now, again, a 7-day notice should be filed electronically or over the counter with documents to the 3rd schedule. Okay. What documents require a 7-day notice? Okay, these are documents that are required. A valid application for a fire cert. Not an existing fire cert that you got ages ago and you add on. I know some local authorities do that. That's up to yourself because you're the ones that make this consideration. But it's an application for a fire cert. Okay, a 7-day notice, you have to have a statutory declaration. Okay, it's just plans and calculations. Again, we're back to this issue, general arrangement drawings. These drawings have to show, demonstrate compliance. Now, these drawings are usually always different because you're dealing with fire certs come in, so they're actually more or less into construction drawings. They're fairly good general arrangement drawings. They're never usually just simple plan and permission drawings on that. Okay, and then again, you have to complete the online assessment. Again, you can do it and then come back into it. Okay, and then the preliminary inspection plan. That's what certificates are required. Certificate of design says the same principle is with this. The issues that you would get, it's the designer doesn't sign it, the designer isn't registered, he has to be registered. Again, he's certifying that the drawings he has to comply with the building regulations, and the sign certifier, he accepts the role. The builder accepts it because he's taken an undertaking to build in accordance to the drawings that are submitted. Okay, and the forms are in the third schedule and they cannot be altered. Okay, and again, there's the form. You don't need plan permission. Okay, there's no DAC on this, so you don't need a DAC. Some of the issues you get here is putting in the fire safety cert number, getting the application, that timeline, you can get issues. Be lenient with it. That is my advice. Whatever you choose, because you're a building control authority, you're a principality, nobody can tell you what to do. You can only be advised, okay? Then again, you have design. He says in designing to the drawings that are already submitted, these comply. Again, my advice is check them. Okay, sign certifier inspection plan. Okay, builder, I'm going to build to the drawings submitted. This is where issues can happen onto you. Okay, and then that's your declaration that has to be signed for the opt-out because you're doing work. So in summary, 4 types of commencement notices as one layer of complications. Okay, you then have only applicable commencement notice, only applicable where the compliance with the building regulations is required. If it's exempted from building regulations, it's exempted. And if you need clarification, what I would advise in regards to building regulations and exemptions, there's the definitions of what a dwelling is or what an agricultural building is in the building regulations, and that should be your first port of call, not the building control regulations, the building regulations for the definitions. Okay, it's something that's widely overlooked. Okay, exemption from plan permission, exemption from building regulations, but not, or building control regulations, but not from the building regulations. Okay. Okay, BCMS is not the building control system, or the BCMS is not the building control regulations. It's only an online process. It's only an online system. It doesn't have everything there. It's important about the design cert, because the design cert links to the drawings links to the builder cert, which links to what's on site. Builders, I'm just building what I was given. But there's a problem there because you can't go after the design certifier. Under the regs, you can only go after the owner of the builder. Okay, building control authority, they consider it. Okay, as I said before, customers are always right, but they're still your customer. Remember that. Think of your bigger picture of your local authority. Think of the consequences down the line. Most money people will ever spend in their lives is a property or an investment. Think of that. This is only a small process. The purpose of the building control regulations is to ensure compliance with the building regulations. Because you can have a scenario where you don't have a commencement notice, you don't have a cert of compliance, you don't have a fire cert, but the building is 100% compliant with the building regulations, but you can't open it, you can't occupy it, you can't use it according to the building control regulations. And what's the purpose of the building control regulations? To ensure that it complies fully with the building regulations. So when you're considering something, consider the whole process. Advise, constantly advise, because one of the things is you can't say, like a traffic warden, sitting behind the wall, waiting for the meter to go, I wait another half hour and get him. You go, that's going to go in half an hour. Advise him. Okay, that's my advice. You can take it or leave it. It cost me to learn it. 7-day notice requires a fire safety cert application. A 7-day notice is different. The certs are different. The wording is different. Again, check that, because sometimes they mix them up if it's over the counter. Notice, it never expires. never withers. It's there for life. Commencement notice. Once it's commenced, once it's valid and commenced, concrete in the foundations or workers commence, it never expires, irrespective of the time period. The building regulations that are applicable to it do change, and depending on what the construction stage is, that's it. Okay? Then cannot get a 7-day notice for completion of works. Once the works are started and you don't have a fire cert, you're just straight into fire regs or regularization cert. That's your only option. That's the regs. It is absolutely unforgiving. Okay, and again, the builder cert, it's built to what's certified. Schedule 6, that's the wording. I hereby certify I have built in accordance to design cert. That's what the cert says. So it's linked back in, and as I told you before, one of the court cases I had dealt with, the builder was saying, I'm not the only one to blame. And he wasn't. But the legislation only means I can go after him, which made it an absolute nightmare to be dealing with. So try and prevent it at the very beginning. Because if you can prevent it at the beginning because of the complexity and the higher probability of a mistake happening, if you intervene or try to assist in a proactive way to try to get everyone on board, it can happen sometimes, but if you can do, because it reduces the probability of an error or a mistake happening, which then somebody can open, they can occupy, and they can use that building. This is like the old problem where you check twice, you submit once. That's what you got to be thinking. Okay, thank you.